She tore into the janitor in front of everyone, voice sharp, heels sharper, heat in her stammer like a woman trying to make a bonfire out of someone else's dignity. "You're a disgrace to the brand," she snapped, loud enough for clients to hear. The man with the mop didn't flinch. He just kept wringing it out, as if the insult had slipped off like water off wax. What Colleen Draper didn't know was that the man she humiliated before 9 a.m. wasn't hired to clean up spills. He was the new owner, and every word she said was being etched into his memory like a report card written in reverse. If you've ever seen someone underestimate the wrong person, this story is your kind of justice. So, before we mop up what really happened, drop a comment, and hit subscribe. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We reveal what silence remembers. Raymond Ellis had parked across the street just before 7:00 a.m. The sky was still undecided, half Chemont, half sunrise. He sat in his truck a moment longer, eyes locked on the showroom glowing under two bright lights. Then he stepped out in khakis, non-slip shoes, and a maintenance shirt with Ray stitched into the pocket. No suit, no tie, no security detail, just a mop and a plan. He wasn't there to make an entrance. He was there to disappear, to blend into the background and see what leadership looked like when it thought no one important was watching. Inside, the place was already buzzing. Phones rang, schedules flipped, coffee steamed. Colleen stormed in like she owned the air, heels stabbing the tile, jaw clenched like a badge. At 8:17 a.m. she found her mark. "Who let maintenance into the showroom during open hours?" she barked, scanning Raymond like he was a smudge on her reflection. "You're dragging dirt across high-gloss flooring." Raymond looked up calmly. "Fresh water, clean mop head." But she wasn't listening. She wasn't correcting. She was performing. For the clients, the staff, the silence that gave her power. No one spoke up. A few shifted in place. One salesman, Milo, looked like he might say something, but didn't. That's how fear works in places like this. It doesn't shout. It hovers. Staff moved around Colleen like she was made of glass, expensive, fragile, and dangerous to touch. No one wanted to be next. Raymond caught it all. The stiff smiles, the dropped eyes, the way people learned to shrink in her shadow. He wasn't there to mop the floor. He was there to study what spilled out of people when status walked into the room. Raymond didn't argue. He didn't puff his chest. He dipped the mop and kept going, calm and slow, watching more than he cleaned. Because the floor didn't need defending. The culture did. Colleen thought she'd put him in his place, but that was the moment she showed him hers, and as Raymond moved toward the service bay, Milo stared after him, eyebrows pinched. Something about the way that man stood still in the storm. It didn't match the uniform, and the question began to rise, who is he really? Because that wasn't the calm of a janitor. That was the stillness of someone who already owned the storm. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. The break room buzzed just low enough to feel safe. Lana sat by the microwave scrolling her phone, Milo across from her poking at his lunch like it might bite back. Dana, the blunt one from finance, sipped her soda with one eyebrow raised. "You saw him, right?" Lana asked, voice barely above a whisper. "The janitor?" Milo nodded. "Yeah, but did you notice? He didn't flinch, not once." Dana leaned in. "Exactly. He didn't look scared, didn't look lost. He knew where everything was, even the keys to the back supply." Lana hesitated, then added, "He didn't even blink when Colleen lit into him. Just kept going, like he expected it." Milo leaned back in his chair. "That's not a janitor. That's somebody watching." A few feet away, just outside the door, Raymond crouched by the utility sink, refilling a spray bottle. The door was open an inch. "Enough." He heard the whispers, the hesitation, the flickers of realization starting to spark. They were catching on, but that wasn't a problem. It was the point. He didn't smile. didn't shift, just listened. They were right about one thing, he thought. I didn't come to clean floors. I came to clean house. What they didn't know yet was how much grime had settled in the corners of that dealership, hidden under policies, tucked beneath polite smiles. But Raymond had seen enough to know. When people are forced to whisper, the room is already broken. The next explosion came during the lunch rush. A kid dropped a juice box near the entrance, liquid spreading fast over the tile. His mom looked mortified, scrambling for napkins. Raymond got there first. Quiet, quick, no drama. Just a towel and 2 steady hands. But Colleen saw it. Saw him kneeling on the showroom floor in front of clients, and that was all she needed. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted from across the lobby, cutting through music, conversation, and decency all at once. "You're wiping floors in front of customers on your knees? What is this, a truck stop?" The mother tried to interject. "He was helping us," but Colleen waved her off like a gnat. "You think this is what we want buyers to see? A man crawling around like we're running a daycare?" The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was loaded. Milo froze near the finance desk, his eyes darting from Raymond to Colleen. Dana muttered, "She's doing it again," under her breath. Lana actually stood up, then sat right back down, unsure. No one spoke, but the discomfort was visible now, stretching through the room like smoke from an invisible fire. Raymond stood up slowly, towel in hand, eyes locked on Colleen's. He didn't say a word, didn't raise a brow. He just stood there, patient and unmoved, like time had paused around him. And for the first time, Colleen blinked first. "Keep to the service bay," she muttered, walking off with more swagger than confidence. Fear is loud, but shame? Shame is quieter. And that's what they all felt, secondhand, soaked in it. Raymond didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. He folded the towel, placed it neatly on his cart, and returned to his corner of the room. But something had changed. Not in him, in them. The staff. The whispers were now glances. The fear, now awareness. Colleen had thrown another tantrum, but this time her audience didn't clap. Raymond picked up his notebook, the same one he'd kept in his shirt pocket since day one, and scribbled 5 words in calm, permanent ink. They work through fear here. That wasn't bitterness, it was documentation. And as he closed the notebook and tucked it away, he looked around the room and thought, good, now they're paying attention. If you've ever stayed silent to keep your job, or watched someone get cut down just to remind the room who's boss, ask yourself this: what if the person they disrespected was actually the one who had the power to change everything? Because real change doesn't start with a title. It starts with the quiet moment after a public mess, when people finally stop pretending they didn't see it. If that moment hit you, if you've lived that silence, don't scroll past it. Speak it, share it, or at the very least, remember, the mop wasn't the tool, the silence was, and that silence just cracked. Colleen was consistent. If nothing else, she was predictable in her pettiness. Raymond watched as she chastised Lana at the front desk for laughing too loudly while answering phones. Then, 5 minutes later, publicly corrected a porter's stance while he cleaned fingerprints off a display window. "Wipe in circles," she barked, as if motion itself dictated brand value. When a technician from service tried to explain a warranty miscommunication, Colleen cut him off mid-sentence with a dismissive hand wave and pivoted to another topic without apology. None of it was large enough to spark outrage, but taken together, Raymond saw it for what it was. A culture of control dressed up as professionalism. She wasn't leading, she was tightening screws, one small act at a time. It was mid-afternoon when Raymond caught Dean Hollow at the corner of the hallway, fixing a jammed lock on a utility door. Assistant manager, 10 years at the dealership, calm as stone but always moving. Quiet fixes, no credit. Raymond offered a hand with the hinge, and they worked silently for a minute before Dean finally said, "You've been here, what, a few days?" Raymond nodded. That's right." Dean glanced sideways. "You carry yourself like someone who doesn't need this job." Raymond smiled lightly. "Maybe I don't. Maybe I just want to see how things work when no one thinks the stakes are high." Dean said nothing, but the quiet between them held weight. He looked like a man who'd once tried to speak up and got spoken over. Raymond respected that kind of silence. It was the kind that remembered. Later that week, Colleen called a team meeting in the glass conference room. Staff filed in, some clutching clipboards, others just holding their breath. She stood at the whiteboard like a coach before the big game, except no one was playing. They were bracing. "We are not just selling vehicles," she said, circling a quarterly number. "We are selling perception. Every interaction is either a step toward trust or a reason for a customer to walk." The words were slick, polished, but her eyes scanned the room like a metal detector at the airport, looking for threats, not growth. She never mentioned the mop incident, but everyone knew. "If we let standards slip," she added, "we're not a dealership, we're a discount lot." Raymond watched from behind the glass, mop cart parked just out of sight. The room was nodding, but no one looked convinced. They weren't motivated, they were managed. Back at his cart, Raymond opened the notebook. The pages had changed, not just observations now, but architecture, relationships, behaviors, cause and effect. He scribbled one sentence. Respect here was rationed, and fear did the cooking. It wasn't just Colleen's behavior that worried him. It was how everyone else adjusted themselves to survive it. People moved through the building like furniture. Quiet, useful, not meant to speak. Promotions went to those who stayed small. Mistakes were magnified if you weren't favored. Raymond wasn't looking at a dealership. He was looking at a system built on silence. A place where fear was cheaper than training and control was mistaken for culture. By the end of the day, he had seen every department's habits. Who clocked in early and who only smiled when Colleen passed by, who carried weight and who carried resentment, who checked their phone like it was a lifeline between instructions. Most importantly, he knew who the real glue was, and it wasn't the person in the glass office. It was the guy patching broken locks and smoothing over awkward pauses. It was the receptionist who kept order without ever being asked. It was the mechanic who trained the new techs quietly out of pride, not policy. Raymond had seen enough to form the plan. It wouldn't be loud. It would be exact, and as he closed his notebook for the day, a single thought settled in his mind like a promise. You can't polish a culture that was built on control. You can only break it open and build it again. If you've ever walked into a place that looked polished but smelled like fear, you already know. The gloss means nothing if dignity gets scrubbed out in the name of performance. If this hits close to home, don't ignore it. Don't nod quietly and keep moving. Ask the question nobody dares. Who made the silence seem normal? Because the moment you name it, it stops being invisible. And that's where change begins. The black town car pulled up at exactly 10:00, i.e., imming. Its windows tinted, its timing deliberate. Colleen stepped out of her office just as the driver opened the rear door. She smoothed her blazer, applied a final swipe of lipstick, and moved briskly toward the front, heels clicking like punctuation. A tall man in a tailored gray suit emerged first, polished, confident. Colleen smiled wide and extended her hand. "Welcome to McAllister Motors," she beamed. But before he could respond, the other door opened. Out stepped Raymond. No mop bucket, no name patch, just a navy suit sharp enough to cut glass, a crisp white shirt, and a quiet stare that didn't blink. Her smile twitched. Her hand dropped. The driver's voice carried over the stunned silence. "This is Mr. Raymond Ellis, majority owner of Ellis Automotive Holdings and now principal owner of this dealership." Colleen didn't speak. Couldn't. Not yet. Raymond took a step forward, every movement as calm as it was final. "Nice to see you again," he said, his voice smooth but heavy. Colleen's mouth parted, struggling to catch up to the moment. You can't just pretend," she stammered, voice cracking like a windshield hit from the inside. "Actually," Raymond said, folding his hands, "I can, and I did." He took another step. You judged me in 30 seconds. I took 72 hours to watch you unravel. The sales floor stood still. Phones stopped ringing. Coffee cooled mid-air. Milo nearly dropped his cup, catching it just before it hit the floor. Colleen blinked fast, like she was trying to wake up, but the room was already wide awake. No one stood beside her, not Lana at the front desk, not Dean, who lingered by the hallway, not Milo, who had once hesitated but now watched like someone seeing things clearly for the first time. Everyone remembered. They remembered the mopping, the public shaming, the way they all looked away, and now the man they ignored stood center stage, not with rage, but with control. Not with a microphone, but with presence. The janitor wasn't the janitor, and the woman who ruled the room now looked like a shadow behind glass. Raymond didn't raise his voice. He didn't list her offenses one by one. He let the room do that work. You don't build excellence by managing fear, he said. You build it by trusting people to speak, and when they're afraid to talk, when they're afraid to laugh, when they're afraid to even make a mistake, you haven't created structure. You've created silence. He turned to the staff, each pair of eyes now fixed on him, not out of fear, but focus. And silence might make things look polished on the outside, but on the inside, that's where culture starts to rot. Colleen crossed her arms, chin lifted as if posture could protect her. But no one mirrored her stance. No one defended her tone. Because this wasn't just about what she did. It was about what they all let happen. Then Raymond delivered the one sentence that cracked what was left of the illusion. I'm calling a full staff meeting, he said, voice steady as brick. Every department, full attendance. He turned slightly. Yes, Colleen, that includes you. The front door creaked as a breeze slipped in, but no one moved. They all knew the meeting wasn't about policy. It was about power, and for the first time it was shifting. If you've ever stood in the back of the room hoping someone else would speak up, this is your moment. Because silence doesn't just protect the loudest voice, it erases the ones that deserve to be heard. And when the quiet one finally speaks, don't look away. Listen, share this, speak this, because every workplace has a Colleen, and every one of them thinks no one's watching, until the janitor walks in, wearing a suit. The room was packed. Salespeople leaned against the back wall, techs still in coveralls stood beside finance staff in business casual. Coffee cups went untouched, phones silenced themselves. At the front, Raymond stood alone. No slides, no flashy charts, just a man who'd mopped the floors last week and now held every eye in the building. First, he said, calm and low, thank you for showing up. I know this wasn't scheduled, but real conversations rarely are. He looked around slowly, making sure everyone saw themselves in his eyes. What I'm about to say isn't about punishment. It's about truth. Because here's the truth. You shouldn't have to survive your workplace. He let that line hang, like a set of keys dropped in a silent room. Fear has replaced feedback, he continued. People here don't grow. They shrink. They don't speak. They calculate. Not because they're lazy or weak, but because somewhere along the way, fear got rewarded louder than excellence. He looked directly at Colleen, who stood arms crossed near the corner. You've been selling shine, not substance. And that works until someone touches the surface and realizes there's nothing underneath. A few heads turned toward her, not hostile, just awake. Colleen stepped forward, voice clipped. I was maintaining order. That's my job, to keep this place running smoothly. Raymond's face didn't change. No, he said, with quiet certainty. You were maintaining control, at the cost of dignity, at the cost of trust. You didn't build a team, you installed a thermostat and froze the room. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't speak again. The weight of the room had shifted, not toward outrage, but clarity. Raymond took a breath, then delivered the sentence that landed with the finality of a closed ledger. Effective immediately, Colleen, you're being placed on administrative leave. HR will follow up. You'll be given time, space, and a choice. But not here. Not now. He didn't glare. He didn't gloat. He simply turned back to the staff. They didn't cheer, they didn't whisper, but across the room people exhaled, some for the first time in months, like they'd been holding it in just to get through the day. Then he turned to Dean. Some of you already lean on him. Some of you trust him more than the org chart ever showed. Dean Hollow, you've held this place together without shouting once. Today, I want to do something loud for you. I'm offering you the interim general manager role starting now. Dean blinked. The room stilled again. Then Milo clapped, once, then another. Not thunderous, just true. Raymond smiled, because quiet leadership doesn't need volume, it just needs presence. And presence, my friends, is what you build when no one's watching, but you lead anyway. If you've ever worked somewhere that confused obedience for loyalty, this is your reminder. Leadership isn't a title or tone. It's how people feel when you walk in the room, and how they carry themselves after you leave it. If this story hit home, don't just nod, don't just scroll. Speak it, share it, because the culture we tolerate is the culture we become, and sometimes it only takes one meeting to start the rebuild. The shift didn't come with fireworks, it came with breath. Quiet ones, the kind you don't realize you've been holding until someone makes room for it. The Monday after Colleen's exit, the dealership didn't look different. Same polished floors, same glossy brochures, same sunlight bouncing off rows of spotless SUVs. But inside, the current had changed. Technicians cracked jokes over engine bays without whispering. Lana laughed at a customer's dad joke and didn't glance around for permission. Milo sold a car and didn't rush to report it. He just smiled like it finally meant something. Nobody danced on desks. But nobody flinched either. And that was everything. Raymond didn't camp out in an upstairs office. He walked the floor, not with noise, but with notice. He asked the techs what equipment needed upgrading. He asked reception how they handled rude customers. He asked Milo what kind of training would help new hires actually last. He didn't take notes on a laptop. He listened with his eyes. Sometimes he said nothing at all, just nodded and kept walking. The mop bucket still sat tucked in the same corner by the utility closet, clean, dry, untouched. But nobody dared move it. Because it wasn't a tool anymore. It was a marker, a story, a reminder that power doesn't always walk in with a badge. Sometimes it pushes a cart and listens harder than it speaks. That Friday, the staff gathered out back for an informal cookout, organized by Dean, approved by everyone. No emails, no agendas, just music, burgers, and air. Raymond stepped up onto a wooden pallet, soda in hand, and looked out at the crowd. "All right," he said, loud enough for the laughter to quiet, but soft enough not to crush it. "Just a few words before y'all devour everything and pretend the potato salad didn't come from the gas station." Chuckles rolled through the group. He waited, then spoke. "This dealership, it's not about cars, it never was. It's about people. And people don't need fear to function. They need space. To speak, to mess up, to grow." He paused, eyes scanning the faces that now held less armor. Respect is the only polish this place needs. Uniforms don't matter. Titles don't matter. What matters is how we treat each other, especially when no one's looking. A beat, then another. "And, yeah," he added, "I still remember who flinched and who didn't." Later, as the sun dropped low behind the service bay, Raymond walked back through the showroom alone. The building had emptied for the weekend. Echoes of conversation still lingered in the corners. He paused at the mop bucket, the same one he'd wheeled through 3 days of judgment. He didn't touch it, just stood beside it for a moment. "You don't earn respect once," he murmured. "You earn it every time you show up with your ears open." Then he turned and walked away. No applause, no music swell, just the quiet creak of a clean floor under shoes that knew where they stood. If this story made something in you stop, just for a second, don't scroll past it, don't shrug it off. Because kindness isn't weakness, It's the fire that reshapes the room. Quietly, completely. And when it shows up dressed like no one important, you better believe everything's about to change. Share this. Speak this. Because someone out there is still mopping a floor they already own. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.